Hello and hello. Do
You're
you
gonna
want
tee
to
us up?
open?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
do
tee
you want
us
to
up.
open this week? Yeah, no, you
You
go
do.
ahead.
Oh, hold on.
Hey,
Shut up.
all right, let's get into it. Starting off with the teams as always, Mike. This
Yeah.
and they're one and the same because the teams almost everyone is split up. So we're inevitably going to be talking about pretty much the one driver that hooked it together for each team. But
Yeah.
let's still start with the teams. Is there one specifically you got in mind? Is anything you want to start with?
Well, maybe we just quickly together review like what we saw over the course of the weekend and then in qualifying. I mean, it's difficult because of what happened in FP2 that you had the signs crash that resulted in a red flag, and then you had Hulkenberg doing the same thing, another red flag. I mean, the fact that it really limited some of the long run programs is it's making it really kind of difficult to project what you might see from a race pace perspective right now. And
It
so I mean that's
is.
always frustrating, but there could be some value. I haven't looked at all of the lines just yet. I'm already
Mm-hmm.
just based on looking at the race match bets team, which is usually where we start. I'm not
I
seeing
like
like a
starting
ton of
there.
really good value, right? So I don't know, like maybe that they're just taking the books are taking a very conservative look at some of the racing lines because of what they don't have really any sense of what's going to happen tomorrow.
Well, I think you're right, and I think a part of that is that the teams are so split. I did have a little bit of time to look through the book during the Santa Claus parade,
Oh yeah.
and Vegas and the lines are very clearly saying that this is going to be Max. They think Lando comes through and is P2 more
Yeah.
so than Charles holding on to it. The book
Yeah.
is very bullish on McLaren over Ferrari, which I so let's start there. I mean, is it a guarantee to you that McLaren is the better race car? They expected it to be good this week.
Yeah.
Lando's in fifth because he just had a moment that ruined his fast lap. But at the end of the day, Charles still did hook it together. And this is a Ferrari that we've seen is pretty good in race trim the past couple of races.
Yeah. I'm much more just like the books are. I'm much more bullish on McLaren. I
You
like the
are.
fact, obviously, from
Yeah.
from a race match bets perspective, minus 250 on McLaren versus the one Ferrari. I think we might want to look at and consider. I think this is a medium speed. This is a track that has a lot of medium speed and high speed corners. We know that the McLaren over the back half of the year has shown extremely well in that corner spread. Probably
Hmm.
comparably, if not better than Red Bull sometimes. They just don't have the straight line speed to really keep up with Red Bull ultimately. But I think this is going to be a track Oscar and Lando going into this weekend thought that they would fare well. Both of them had their own series of mistakes in qualifying that, really theoretically Lando could have qualified P2, I think, without that big slide happening. I think
Yeah.
Oscar, he admitted himself that he had a couple of sections where a couple of turns that he just couldn't put it together for whatever reason, but they both feel really good about the car. Conversely though, I think Leclerc was really surprised to see himself finish in P2. And, one of the reasons why I had I've thrown out our hot pick as Leclerc being on the front row is because they just for whatever reason on the C5 compound and in lower tire temps, which we saw with the evening
Hmm.
session, they tend to put it together, and it just ended up happening for them. But I think in race trim, this is going to be a Red Bull McLaren ultimately podium.
You did mention that it was limited data, but they did get race simulation data out of the limited practice, and Ferrari
Okay.
was the closest team to Red Bull. They were right there. McLaren was a step behind Ferrari in the race based simulation.
Where
I
do you
do
see
like that
that?
there's two McLarens.
Yeah, I didn't see any. I don't think there
It
was
was in
enough
the
running
pre-show.
to see.
It was in the pre-show.
Oh, they showed pre-show stuff. Okay, I didn't see it.
Like
I
I
saw
watched
the
it. They just did a little
yeah.
segment. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some of the qualifying projections come out. I didn't see that. I didn't see any major outlets publishing anything in terms of what the projected pace could be, just because it just wasn't enough data and comparable runs on comparable tire compounds to really. I guess you kind of have to go back to looking at previous data from previous tracks. It's not a great comparison, but I'm thinking like maybe Mexico. Some, that's not really good enough. It's rear limited, but
Not
and you
you
got the
can't really
straights,
compare
but
anything to Mexico
the
with the
cor the
altitude.
yeah, the altitude and the
Such
corner
weird
spread,
setups.
it's too different. I know you're right.
I don't know. It's a unique track. It literally has a mix of everything. There is a
Yeah.
couple heartbreaking zones, and then
Well,
those two massive straights.
you think about how much you saw across all of the practice sessions in qualifying. Think about how much like sliding you saw. Like there was clearly a lack of grip out there for whatever reason, but this track does tend to ramp up quite quickly. Um, I would
Yeah,
say that if you're
and they have
carrying a bit
support
more,
series.
yeah, and if you're carrying a bit more natural downforce on the car, which the McLaren and the Red Bull obviously do, maybe even the Mercedes if you want to look at consider them, because George put it in on the well, he's four, right? He started in the second
Season
row.
four. We'll talk about them in it. We'll talk about them
Yeah,
in a minute.
talk about them in a sec. But I'm like, if we're looking at a comparison between the top three teams, Red Bull, Ferrari,
Hmm.
McLaren, based on how the grid is set up right now, I'm gravitating toward McLaren. I think again, a good corner spread for them. Hopefully that extra downforce that the car seems to carry with the underfloor and with the suspension tends to allow them to take care of their tires a little bit better. I think tire management it's probably going to be a really big factor in this race. Ultimately, in the end, it seems like a weird thing to say, but I look like Yuki had a quote coming out of qualifying where he thought, I think everybody is expecting that the DEG is a little bit higher than what normally you see in Abu Dhabi. So that's probably going to be a big factor
Interesting.
ultimately. Yeah.
Do you know if it's a one stop or a two stop? Did you see that anywhere?
I saw that it was probably
You
going to
sometimes
be,
find a way.
yeah, I thought it was going to be a one stop, it seemed like. Um, and you could tell by the tire choices in practice that it looked like maybe a lot of teams were leaving the hards, like they weren't doing a ton of running on the hards, which means they're probably thinking that it's going to be the race tire at the very least. So maybe it's a medium hard.
Yeah. Okay.
I
I
mean, if
don't see a
DEG is
lot of
higher,
value on the McLaren side.
you don't see a lot of value. I mean, minus 250 is essentially, I think, the upper limit. Like, unless we see something else that we really like, I don't mind having both Oscar and Lando chase after Charles. Like, I don't. So let's put it this way: Charles is not going to have a quiet race in P2, right? Like, that's not going to happen for him. He's not going to just
No.
easily run away with it. He's going to be There's going to be a gap to Max almost immediately, and I don't know how long George is going to be able to hold the P4 slot. So you're going to have Lando and Oscar working together to catch Charles. And if something doesn't happen where he ends up coming out after a pit stop and gets caught in traffic, or he doesn't end up back out in front of Oscar or Lando if he's caught him by that point,
Hmm.
I don't know, man. I like the minus 250. I think there's some value there for sure.
Do you think there's any way that it's Oscar that actually gets him?
It could be easily. Oh, easily.
Where I'm
Yeah.
coming from, the book, look, the top two finish in the book, Lando's minus 150. Charles is plus 225. Oscar's plus 1,000. I know that's those are driver bets, but just to see like the book is very clearly saying Lando just comes through to P2,
He's
which to me
Yeah.
feels surprising.
I
So
don't
I
think it
don't
feels. No, I don't. It's not. I don't think it's surprising at all. I think he's gonna show extremely good race pace. This is just.
you
It's a
think so?
track layout that I think is really going to favor the McLaren ultimately in the end. I think the books are probably right on top of it in the end. Now, my only concern with taking an Oscar Piastri over Lando Norris, and I like the thought right away, chaps. I really love that. But my only concern is if this does become a race that is dominated by tire management, we've already seen multiple
I
times
know.
this year
Lando's yeah.
that Lando
Yeah.
has the edge on him. And it makes sense. Again, it takes time for Oscar to learn the tricks of the trade. He doesn't have that much running time in a Formula One car. But
Yeah.
maybe do we take a chance? Like I'm not opposed to looking at, something like that.
He starts in third.
I
We're
know.
saying that the McLaren is the better race car over the Ferrari. It's going to have better tire management.
Yeah.
So
This
we're
is
so does he get one position?
you
And
like
we've
it's
seen him hold off Lando. Like
I know.
Oscar's the one that won the sprint this year,
I
not
know. He can
Lando.
do it.
There
So
wasn't team orders. There wasn't.
it's he finally gets back to a track that he's run on before too. Like he's familiar with the Abu Dhabi circuit, which is
Yeah.
great. He knows the Osprey, which is huge. And you know what that might mean? That might mean that he has a little bit better of a chance to get on top of Deg issues. Not that we necessarily know that that's going to be the case, but if it does end up popping up as a concern in the race, then perhaps his previous experiences here are going to allow him to get on top of it better than he did in Suzuka, better than he did in Qatar. There's a chance of that at the very least.
Mhm.
Man, I'm okay to try to swing for the fences on something because I actually think,
I mean that is swinging for the fences. I looked a couple hours ago. Him on
yeah,
the podium was plus 150. It's dropped to 125, but he's still plus money to be on the podium even. But a plus 1,000 at P2. Like again, the book is saying that this is probably Max Lando Oscar
yeah.
is what is that's what they're looking at
So
right now.
I tend to agree with that. I mean, I don't know. Do you think? Do you want to touch on George being in P4? Do you think he's a
Let's
risk
talk
if
about the
he's?
Mercedes.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to figure out what the long runs that. So I heard Andrew Shovlin was talking after FP2, and they seem like they normally do. They seem fairly confident about the long run pace of the car, which I don't know what Lewis is going to be able to extract out of it from P11.
Hmm.
Um, I think he can probably get up. Maybe possibly he can threaten for a top six spot, but I don't know what to expect from him because of, like you said, how much he struggled with finding a setup that he liked. Like there could be a chance that he just has a really difficult race because of his lack of balance that it seems to be finding right now.
Well, he's parked for May now. Like he
Yeah,
doesn't have a setup he likes. He said he was
yeah,
getting oversteer on one corner, understeer on the
yeah.
other corner. It's just unreliable, inconsistent. So I don't.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think you could. We're not gonna. You might be
yeah.
able to bet around him in a way that you could take advantage of that potential position that theoretically the book has him coming into. Because what is he top six? I'm interested to see what they think.
They have him minus money to top six,
Right. So they think he's going to be a top six car, but I guess
minus one
theoretically there's a
fifty.
there's a possibility that he doesn't finish in a top six spot if he's having that much trouble with balance in the end. Right.
I'm not sure I want to be on a side. To be honest, I don't think we need to take the risk on him this weekend.
No, but I'm more thinking like, do you think that those potential spots are going to be available? Like that's what I'm interested in seeing at this point. Is
To be
if those
honest, I
spots
like
are
the
so.
lines on Yuki or Fernando to hold on to a top six position.
I liked Yuki.
The
Do you
AlphaTauri
want
has
to
the
talk?
new floor for the last race of the year.
Chaps, like, is this another? Do we want to try to go all in on AlphaTauri again? Like, what are they to finish in the top 10?
Yuki's plus 250 and
Plus
Fernando's
900.
plus 200. Sorry, plus
But
350 for top six.
man, both cars points finish again, plus 900 for AlphaTauri.
Yeah, but you need Danny Rick to come from 15,
I think he
and it's
could
a
do it
two
though.
car bet. I think we can get value on Yuki alone.
Okay.
Maybe
What do you see with Yuki?
I saw him in the top six was plus 350. I don't even know if we have to go that long on him. What's he in
I
the
don't like top
points?
six for him. He's gonna have a
Minus
spin or
150 for
something.
the points.
That's
I
not a
don't
bad
love it
bet
minus
actually.
money though
No,
on the
I like the
AlphaTauri.
plus. I like the plus 900 to have Danny come through and it's a flyer like that. I like way more because
I'll put that down.
Danny
I
can
don't
do it.
mind that.
Yeah, yeah, like Danny can do it. Danny theoretically, if we think that they're going to take a big step with this floor, which they seem to think that it might be, it could be worth a
Hmm.
couple of tenths in the end, and you see Yuki come out and put it in the top six. Like I think that the floor is going to work. They said that the upgrade is working as intended, which is great. I love the fact that they brought it to this race. I think that ultimately this is a car that seems to do well with this corner type 2. It's
Yep.
interesting for whatever reason. Like they seem to do quite well with this.
Well, because
Well,
it's the
now,
Red Bull
sorry,
now.
it's evolved into a car that is
Yeah.
doing well with this corner type, right?
Well, they
And
put the
if they've
Red Bull
got,
suspension on. They
yeah,
realize they like it. Now they've brought a floor upgrade to match it, and
I
so they're
know.
saying last race of the year they might start in a decent position next year
I
if they
think they
get
could.
good data out of this floor here and it works.
Yeah. Well, this goes back to like being ahead of the curve type of stuff. Like, what can we get? What value can we extract out of the last race of the season that puts us in a good position? I love so the reason I like the Oscar bet is because I think I can see the narrative going into the off season. Like, wow, Oscar Piastri is a legitimate threat to Lando Norris
I
because
think he is.
X, Y, and Z. Like, you and I have always said that. I think that I've said this a few times too. I think that Oscar Piastri is going to win a race before Lando Norris does. I really do. I truthfully think
Yeah,
that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Like if he like this is he's starting in P3, it could happen something happens to Max. Who knows? Like nothing ever happens to Max, but something happens to Max. He comes out of the race. Oscar Piastri is in a top two spot, he finishes and wins the race. Like I think that's legitimately a possibility at this point.
I could see it happening. What's
Yeah, I really like that top two bet. I love that bet. I love the
the
I
more we
love
think
the
about it, I know.
AlphaTauris.
I
I
love
love
the
the
flyer on them.
AlphaTauris. We're on like super long bets again, but it is what it is.
The only concern I had with the AlphaTaris is when I did look through the grid earlier before we started talking, I had
Yeah.
pinned the Aston Martins maybe as a team that gets both cars in the points.
I
Fernando
don't
starts
know.
there, and
I know
Lance
Fernando
is
starts there.
13.
Yeah.
They've looked good the past couple of races. I don't know. They're
It's
a
hard to say.
lot
So,
shorter. They're plus 200.
what I'm having a hard time reconciling Brazil. Um, like what we know about this car is that it traditionally over the course of the season has done really well in like the slow speed and medium speed corners. You have an array of corners in Abu Dhabi, but I think there's a lot of hay to be made in the high speed stuff, and that's why I really like the McLaren. Now, if Aston Martin has done what they said they've done, which is like kind of mixed and matched their upgrades,
Hmm.
you would still think that the car is more balanced towards the slow speed, maybe the medium speed stuff too.
Because
I
that's
just
some of
like,
the stuff that was working.
yeah. Now, again, tire management, Fernando Alonso in general, and the Aston Martin itself, they've shown that they've been able to get on top of Deg. So if it does become an issue, they probably they can probably deal with it. I just don't know. Like Lance Stroll is such a wild card for me in
I agree.
13, right?
More
Like I
so
don't.
for
Is
you
there
than
what
Daniel
value do
Ricciardo
you?
out of 15th.
I actually agree. So I think yeah. I think with the AlphaTauri bet, you're just betting on they take a step because of the upgrade. So Danny seems to be comfortable in the car. Again, we've talked about that before. It all worked out going leading into Mexico after coming back from the injury. He seems to be he has a setup that he likes in the car, which is great.
Yep.
So I'm quite confident that he's going to be able to extract more from a race pace perspective. I don't want to shy away from the result in Vegas because he talked about it right after the race. They just couldn't get the tires in the right window. And it
Right.
was a 14-degree track temperature. They're not the only team that struggled with getting the tires in the right window. I don't see that necessarily being a problem here. I think you're going to be able to get these compounds into the right window. It's going to be more so how long are they going to last, right? Like that's the biggest issue. Teams are going to get them in the working window, and if we get the AlphaTauri in the working window, they're going to extract a lot I think out of the car. It's whether or not you're going to have those tires last longer than the guy in front of you or behind you.
That's a bit of a coin toss with the new floor. Is the floor going to be great for downforce, but maybe a little harder on the tires than they expect, or is it going to be a great
Don't
upgrade
know.
that's just easy on the tires? I'd
Yeah,
say if I'm going to lean one way or the other, they're building themselves a Red Bull, and the Red Bull's pretty good on tires.
I know.
So
And so like I think it's worth taking. So
I
these
like.
are unknowns. The team doesn't know, right? They have no idea either if they're going to be able to manage like keeping the tires in the window or they're going to have a deck problem. But like you said, if they're trending toward ultimately a Red Bull design, you would imagine that a floor. I was looking at the pictures of the floor edge. It's not the exact same as the Red Bull, but it's got a lot of similar characteristics for sure.
Okay,
And if they've got the rear suspension already, I think it's worth taking a shot at plus 900. I really love that Yuki's already in. It's
I'm going
got
to put a
many
star on it.
positions to work with.
I'm going to put a
Well,
star on it.
we deserve the plus 2000 when we saw it. I bet you that's going to be a popular bet too. I can see it closing at like plus 500 or something like that. So I think if we get
Yeah.
it early enough, we're going to get on top of it, right?
Okay.
Do you
Um,
like so what do you think what's Checo doing here? That's my question.
I
Like
wrote down
I
most
kind
Red Bull points. Like
yeah.
that could be the bulk. Is that where you're heading with
My
it?
no. Actually I was shying away from it. Minus 350 is
Interesting.
too it's too steep.
It's too long or it's too
Yeah.
short.
I was thinking like do you 2 3 that's he has to be 6, right? I think. So it has to be 1 and 6. We do this every week. It
I
has
think
to be
he's in the
max one,
six.
Checo 6. Yeah,
Checo's in the
I think
top
so too.
six.
Yeah, I think so too. There's no value there. So the most team points bet doesn't really make a lot of sense
I
altogether.
wouldn't go on anyone else, dude. We're not gonna go. We can't go against Red Bull to get the most team
No, no,
points.
no, no. I agree. I agree. I think you're right.
What else did I look? I mean, okay. Well, actually, it's maybe a little early for that. I'll save that one. But if you see Checo coming on the podium, plus 400,
Hmm,
he's got work to do. But like,
he's got a lot of work to do.
he's in a good race car and he's only there because he got track limits. He wasn't going to be pole. But he also
No,
there's a lot of track evolution too. Like I think his lap was a little early.
that's interesting. That's an interesting bet. Plus 400 is quite nice. I
For a Red
realistically,
Bull to
I think
just be on the podium.
I know. I truthfully though, like I really think that at this particular track, we're gonna see a very strong McLaren. I really think we will.
I don't disagree. They were
I really
talking
think
about
we will.
that coming into the weekend. Now we see
Yeah,
Oscar P3, Lando P5 with a mistake.
yeah.
They're
Do you think they're
when
gonna?
the team
Yeah,
says it and then they show it, we
yeah.
like to believe them. We like to trust them.
I agree.
What's I mean, if you really want to go down this road, then what's like the combination tricast where we don't really have to pick the order between the McLarens? Plus 400 for Max and both McLarens on the podium.
Mark it down.
Don't have to worry about
I'm
Oscar top two.
yeah. I actually would rather that than taking Oscar top two. I think.
Oscar top two is a long shot. You're getting more than
Sh-
double the value.
It
That is the long shot. Is maybe Oscar is the one that gets Lando or stays in front of Lando. But we're
should be.
both
Yeah, it should
saying
be.
over and over, this is a Red Bull, then two McLaren. This is Max, and then two McLarens.
Yeah.
And the book is saying Lando's definitely the one that's up there. So you and I are saying we like Oscar more than the book is giving him respect for. He probably, yeah.
Like, what do you make of this minus 120 on George for the podium finish? I'm trying to like. So they think
Well, you
like the
know I have the
straight.
fade written down.
I know you do. Yeah. Like it's just been that type of year for George. Do you like realistically? Is he? When was the last time he was? He has one podium this year,
I
right?
can't remember when it was.
And he's. I think the. I wonder how often. I mean, Melbourne was kind of like a turning point for him, running one, I think, before his car blew up. But minus 120 for George to be on the podium, plus 125 for Oscar. Like I think, ah, I still like the Oscar bet. I still like the
I
Oscar
like the
bet over
McLaren
value.
over the Mercedes too.
Yeah, I do. I do.
George probably. I honestly, man, I wouldn't be surprised if this is exactly Vegas. Like Lewis and George are split, and then somehow George finds his way into P7 and Lewis is P6. Like,
Yeah, I know. I agree. I completely agree with that.
do we
Like, what
like
do
the
we?
fade?
Okay,
Max and
go
George
ahead.
no is minus 150 for the combo podium.
I'm actually not. I'm not jumping on that. I'm a little bit hesitant to that.
Interesting.
I'm a little bit hesitant. I'm a little bit hesitant in general, actually.
I haven't looked through the groups. Let me take a look through the groups here. We're on the teams now, or on the drivers now.
Okay, let me go back to the race
George,
match.
they just don't have Max in a group. It's so funny.
I know it is hilarious that they always do that.
Wait, where's Lando? They don't have Lando in a group. They are so confident that Lando comes through to P2 that they can't put him in a group.
Yeah. She's minus 138. Man, I think something as simple as looking at when I was looking at the race match bets, I went back the team match bets and I saw it's minus 138 for Mercedes versus Ferrari. Like they're the favorite with George P4, Charles P2. And like Charles said that he thought he was going to be out in Q1, which is kind of funny because he just
They were
was
bad
dealing
on
with
scrub
so
tires.
much
That was
sliding
his
and
issue. And then
yeah.
when they bolted a new set on, he got through no problem every time.
Yeah, but I think that the difference in this race is you're not going to be running on a brand new set of
No, I
softs. Like
understand
we
that.
know that the
Yeah.
car comes alive on those compounds. George was on the mediums. Like he did some long run stuff in FP2 before Carlos went out, and he was faster. Like so, I think he did some tire prep. Remember leaving myself a note. So he did some tire prep, and then he had a couple of tenths on both of the Ferraris, and I think he was somewhat comparable to Lando. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time with George. I'm not betting. I can't fade him. I'm not gonna fade him. I think
Okay.
he could be one of those weekends where he just comes in with the setup that they have a little bit more natural downforce. He might be able to take care of the tires a little bit more. I'm having a hard time actually now. I'm kind of being scared off of that the 400 combo podium, to be completely honest.
Well, we got to be on something, dude.
We got to be on something. I get
I
that.
don't know. I don't like the Mercedes. The McLaren's the better race car over the Mercedes.
I agree with that. I don't know.
Like
Yeah,
George is gonna hold on.
no. I don't think he's gonna hold on. Actually, he could hold on
He'll be
to
P5. Sure.
he could be P4 P5. Hmm.
Either that or he's gonna cause chaos.
Well, we know he could easily do that.
Like that might be my biggest concern is he's sandwiched the McLarens. Is just a George Russell sandwich.
Yeah. What's the groups? Do you see anything in the groups that you liked?
No, I stopped looking. I'm looking now. Like George is the favorite in his group. Do you see? There's no way that Charles holds on. So you're saying George is better than Charles, and both McLarens are better than Charles.
I think so.
Like what's the fade on Charles to be up there?
That might be the one to take.
Combination podium. Oh, they're all pretty long. Charles and Max is minus 200.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the best line on Charles.
that's not bad actually. That's interesting. Minus 200. Hmm. Like just knowing that it seems like the race tire is going to be the C3,
Mm-hmm.
like that already makes me think like that already puts Ferrari at a disadvantage. Like if this was going to be kind of what so they got to run on the what did they do last weekend? What was it? Soft medium? Yeah.
For during the race.
Yeah.
Oh man, I forget. No, he was on the hard for a bit. He surprised me though. He surprised everyone with his tires. When he pit
That's
early, we both said Charles is going to
yeah.
fall off. There's no way he can hold
But
on to
this is
those
a different
tires.
I know this but that
Different
the
circuit,
conditions,
different temperature. I
yeah,
get all that,
right?
but
All of that factors in.
the Ferrari the trend that they've been trending that they're taking care of their tires for like
I
five
agree.
six races now.
No, I completely agree with that. I mean, I don't necessarily. It might more be for me. It's not necessarily a tire issue. That's kind of like a secondary piece that could affect really anybody ultimately in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that there's not that much like low speed stuff. So I mean, this is Ferrari, like straight line speed and low speed corners. That's how they design their car.
Right,
And it seems like again, much of this race is going to be won in medium speed and high speed. That's where you make up a lot of the time on this track. Unless I'm wrong,
and
unless
that's
you see it differently. I see it that way. I could be wrong though. It seems to me like that's where you make up a lot of track time here.
I think you make up time on both. I mean, if you have a straight line speed delta, and
Yeah.
if you're on the right side of it, you can make up time on the straights. But I think the McLaren is going to make a lot of its time up in the high speed corners,
Yeah. Like a
and
lot.
those. Trying to think of when you go on to that. I think well, definitely one of them's at the end of a straight, which would help them with overtaking if they just have better grip through the high speed corner at the end. Yeah, I like the McLaren. I don't know. But then can you just see Charles holding on? He gets Max maybe in turn one, holds on for a few laps, and then he's just there at the end. What's giving me pause is how confident the book is that Lando's just P2 out of P4, out of P5. And they've given no respect to Oscar. He's
Why
not
is it
even in a
giving?
group. In P5, they couldn't give him a line to pin him against the other four drivers, right? It should be Charles, Oscar, George, Lando in a group, but it's
Yeah, but
not.
If Lando doesn't slide, on his final Q3 lap, like he's
He might have been
P2.
pole.
He might have been
He
pole.
might have
He
even,
could
yeah.
he literally
Yeah, he
could have
was
been
like a
pole.
10. He was within a tenth, I think.
He could have been pole. So I think that the book is doing the right thing by saying, hey man, that could be a pole car, one, A, that generally on balance shows probably a little bit better race pace than they do qualifying pace sometimes. Depends on what happens, but like I think the book is all over it, and they're unless something happens to Lando, I think they're bang on. I I'm I was thinking that in the week up leading up to the race too, that this
Yeah.
is going to be a track that you're going to see a really strong. That's why I like the Oscar Piastri bet. I don't want to get too caught up with George, but it's there's only so many positions up there. I do think that Charles is going to be the one who falls back, and it'll just be like a classic Ferrari. He starts on the front row and then ends up having a tough
Yeah.
finish,
I
right?
mean, I
Like
want to. I'm. That's my instinct too with Ferrari. I'm being cognizant that that hasn't been the Ferrari the past number of races. They haven't screwed him over with a bad strategy call, or calling him in at the wrong time. Their tires haven't fallen off a
no.
cliff, and he's been battling Max for race wins, and then he starts in P2 again.
It's weird to say this, but I feel like if Leclerc didn't have the hydraulic failure in Brazil,
Hmm.
and we got to see him on the track, and you got to see him finish P5, you would be like, oh yeah, okay.
What was he good? I don't. Yeah,
We're
I don't know.
I think he was just going to finish P5 in Brazil. That's my. I think that's going to happen. It's probably going to be the same thing here.
But we got. I mean, if we're going to be at the top of the grid and have something on our slip, I think we have to pick a side between McLaren and Ferrari. And I'm happy to pick McLaren. I think that's the right side to be on. But Charles, he's not out of form, and Ferrari is not the team that they were at the start. I guess that's just what I'm. That's my hesitation. And then you're kind of looking at George, and I was not even. I was looking at a fade on George. And if you're
I
telling me
don't
that
want to.
you're liking George, I don't know.
I don't want to fade him. I guess is my point. Like I don't want to make a fade bet on him. I don't want to make a fade. I want to take the McLaren. Like is the race match bet. I liked it immediately. I liked the minus 250 over like it's you send Oscar and you send Lando after Charles, and it's just like, can one of them finish ahead of him? I like that bet,
Like
minus
the bulk
250.
bet.
Like, is that not the bet that you like? Do you like minus 200? Both of them going after George? Maybe that's a better bet. Maybe we take that.
I like him though both over George. I think. Ooh,
It's hard though. Like again, the book is leaning toward George and away from Charles, and you have to ask the question why, right? You have to
how much
wonder.
does it matter to you that Ferrari and Mercedes are within reach for P2 in the constructors? Like that battle between Charles and George, that's gonna decide who's P2 in the constructors.
Yeah.
Should we be
I mean,
thinking about that at all, or is that just they already care? They
they're
already
going to be
try to win.
trying. They're going to be trying as
Yeah,
hard as they can to win anyway. Like I don't
yeah.
think it changes things realistically, right?
What's the line there?
It's
This
minus
isn't.
200. So you got to go it's minus 200 versus minus 250. And I would like to take one of these. If not if not both. Actually, chaps, let's think about this.
This
Do you
is
take them
Spa.
both?
This is
I
Spa.
I know, but is it though?
It's the two. It's the exact same two bets that we were on. I'm not saying no. I just that's Spa. Maybe we need to get rid of that feeling. Like let's just the last race of the year. Fuck Spa, McLaren. They redeemed themselves all the way back. And we just take the same two bets, and they don't fall off a cliff. Lando doesn't drop to P13 on the first straight.
Like this team
I
is
don't hate
trending in the
it
right direction. This team is trending in the right direction. You get both cars. This is like goes back to that whole you get two cars versus one car, which
on both
we
sides,
all it's a good strategy. Like that's
but
just
I'm
a good
pretty sure that was the case in
strategy in
Spa too.
general. It was.
It
It was.
was. I think
Now,
it
it
was.
was the fact there was again, the difference in that race was environmental factors. Like we don't have to
We were
We know
fooled by
that
the sprint race. McLaren set up for rain. They went hard in. It's going to rain, and it
yeah,
worked in the sprint. It didn't rain in the
it's
race.
this is
That's what happened.
it's a
This is
different
different.
scenario. It's a
This is a
different
different
scenario.
scenario
It's a different scenario, right? Minus 200 and minus 250 are like for us to get two cars versus one car. Never
on
mind
both
the fact
sides
that
of it.
we think that they're actually substantially better than both the Ferrari and the Mercedes. Like we sat here and we said that we thought that was the podium. So
Yeah,
like what that's not like I could do I don't love having two top of the order bets, but I like the fact that we get two cars versus one car each. Like normally we would be trying to find something. Okay, let's say we do that. I like the AlphaTauri still. Like I kind of
I like the
I love.
AlphaTauri
Can you find me one of those ancillary bets like that's either a fade?
somewhere in
I don't
between.
I don't love the fades. Is there anything like that's a soft bet that doesn't rely on like do you think somebody's coming out of the race? Is there a car that doesn't classify?
You know,
Does Ocon
I
because
didn't have a sense. I mean, you got both Alfa Romeos at the back. Maybe they don't
Oc-
care and they just pull them in.
yeah. Ocon has been like sick all weekend. He hasn't been feeling well. Is just that like does he just have a tough race and he ends up retiring or something like that? I mean, I don't know if
I don't. Yeah, I don't have a gut. Sometimes I have a gut
I don't have
feel
any
of
lean.
just going
Yeah,
against the guy. No, I don't have a lean for someone crashing this week.
I don't
I
have a
don't.
lean either. Yeah, I don't
No.
have a lean either. I don't. I was looking at like finishing position. Like, is there something here that I like? I don't see anything there that I really tend to like. Group betting, race match bets. Is there like the race? So race match bets is like I like the match bets because it's technically a 1v1, so you can fade in some ways. Danny,
Like, what's Lewis over George?
Ocon, Gasly, Lewis over George is plus 275. That's a hilarious bet.
It
I just
literally
can't
just
like.
happened last week. No,
Yeah, I
I
can't like
can't.
just because
No.
how Lewis has been talking. I just don't like that. I don't see anything there that I like. Is there like winning margin, race leaders? Like, do we see anything?
Winning margin. I mean, they're all kind of plus money. Race leaders were all plus money too. Let's think about race leaders. So Max off the line. I don't know. He could run away with it. He could not. Is my feeling.
I have no idea. I have literally
I have no idea.
I have no
George is going
sense
to
of what he's
strap
going
on
to
a
do.
set of hards to start the race and just like inherit that extra leader. Yeah, I don't know.
Probably.
I don't know. Yeah,
Do you think like does Lando does he have a like does he close the gap? Is this like if we think McLaren is really going to be showing some good pace? This is
Lando
the
might get
last
him
race
on
of the
lap one.
year? Lando might get who?
George
Max?
on lap one. No,
No, George. I'm looking at winning margin though. I'm thinking like over 12 seconds is plus 110. I'm like I don't like that. I might like something between 6 and 12 seconds at plus 175.
it's so hard to hit the window, but
What do you think? Like do you think that
I didn't. Well,
Max
I
is
don't
going
know.
to
I wasn't gonna.
he was bumping around, he was sliding around. I mean, he doesn't seem like
I could
like
see
he
Oscar having to fight Charles for a few laps, or maybe having to fight George for a few laps. He comes out on top. The McLaren wins that battle, but Max all of a sudden just ran away, and he's 10
he's
seconds down the road.
way
Or
down
I
the
could
road at that
see
point.
Charles getting Max into turn one because he's super aggressive and he knows he's not going to have the tires for the whole race. And then that slows
I
Max down and it's under 6 seconds. Like, I don't know.
I
I see
actually
both
could see
McLarens
that.
getting it all early and
Yeah.
battling for the win. Charles is going to
Yeah.
try to get it early because he has nothing that can survive the
He's
whole race. He's got to
he has
get
nothing.
in front.
He has to control the pace, like in some ways. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He can't be trying to make up a delta. He can't be
No.
running in dirty air behind somebody and trying to like so I could see him being very aggressive on a tire strategy at the beginning, right? It's possible that they do something crazy and they like put him on the
Just start with plan
C4s or
G.
the C5s, like they start with plan G and they put him on the C5s or something. Like imagine. No, that would be crazy. But
No. Yeah, I don't have a gut. Do you have a gut for winning margin?
not really.
Ooh, without Max Verstappen.
Was it just Lando?
Lando's
I'm
plus
assuming.
110. Yeah, it's all the same. Oscar's plus 600.
I would rather make the bet both of those McLaren. Like I think it's more prudent of us to take the minus 250 and minus 200 bets at this point.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna take, so we need a top of the order bet. We might double down on top of the order because it's
We
just
got the
it seems
AlphaTaris at the back.
I like that bet, right? I like that bet.
Is
And
there
is
no
there?
team matchups in the back? It was all the top teams, right? All these matchups? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is interesting. It's technically a bet on this race, but you could just pick who finishes P2 in the constructors, which is like this is a teams point matchup, not a who finishes higher.
That's interesting, dude. So
McLaren.
anything.
Oh, so Merck is minus 150. They have. Let me check. I think it's what is it 4 points?
Ooh, that's interesting.
But Sainz is way behind. So this is like, does Lewis get the extra points to hold on to the gap that? I mean, the book is saying we think George might get Charles. We're seeing Charles fall back. Minus 150 for Mercedes to hold on to the lead that they already have.
What's the math there?
Let's see. Constructors. Merck has 392. Ferrari has 388. It's 4 points. Like if this race goes chalk, Charles gets 18 points for P2 and 15, 12. So that's a 6 point gap. So then Lewis would need to cover 2 points. So he need to be P9. And Carlos doesn't move through everyone.
What's Carlos doing in 16?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like I'm just thinking, like, what if they finish in
Ferrari's plus 110. You could get Ferrari plus a little money.
I don't know if I would.
But I think Merck is the smarter bet. I don't know. Maybe we don't need to be on it, but it's just interesting that you can get this. It's not just the highest finishing position this week.
That's like a more for whatever reason that's like a more intriguing bet to me than anything else that we've seen. So I'm kind of interested in that. I'm kind of because that becomes less of a. There's some fade elements in there too. You get two cars. If a Ferrari comes out of the race, then you're advantaged. If one of your cars comes out of the race, it doesn't mean it's over.
No,
realistically,
George could just go beat Charles if he just finishes higher than Charles.
George beats Charles.
If we're on the Merc side,
finishes in the lower points scoring positions, then like you could.
And this is a circumstantial line where we know the Ferrari's better on Saturdays, but it's not as bad as it was, but it's not a great Sunday car compared to the Merc. The Merc starts with extra points. I don't know. Like, do we want to pick a side between Merc and Ferrari and only be on one McLaren team match bout? So if the McLaren does crash, no. We don't lose two bets automatically.
But you don't lose two bets with two cars. That's
because we have two cars. Right? I get it. Yeah, no, right? I get it.
So if one of them goes
Spa.
out,
it's not Spa. Yeah, it's not Spa.
Man, if it happens again, it happens again. I don't like. I'm not. I would be okay with it. It's not the same thing.
It's not the same. Thing.
It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's
okay,
two cars versus one car.
We're on those two.
Yeah, I just like them. I think that's what we think is going to happen. So we might as well bet what we think is going to happen, right? We think it's going to happen.
If we
make the bet,
if we bet on Merc, also like this doesn't. It's not a hedge. It's not a hedge in any way.
Not at all.
Run away with this.
No. I agree. That's kind of why I like it. It's just this like.
But it also kind of is where if George has. We have to choose who's the bigger risk to stop our McLarens, George or Charles. I think we're both leaning that it's George. So if he does that to us, and the McLaren doesn't beat him, well then he beats the Ferrari for sure, right?
Okay, chaps. Here's how you need to look at it. It is minus 138 Mercedes over Ferrari in the team match bets. You get better value and a 6-point lead. With that,
worse value. It's minus 150. But it's fine. It's marginal. Plus 110 on the Ferrari.
Sorry. Okay, yeah. It's minus 150. So it's marginal. So you're getting marginal.
You get Lewis becomes a factor.
So Lewis becomes a factor. Plus you get the points advantage that they have currently.
Right. The 4 points.
Right. So like this bet, Ferrari versus Mercedes, is a George versus Charles bet essentially, but you don't make it. You take away it being exclusively a Charles versus. I think this is a pretty savvy bet, actually, chaps. I really like this.
I think so too. If the McLarens move through, then both guys drop down. So now their gap gets smaller.
Like less points. That's what I mean, though. Like
because Charles isn't going to win, right?
No, he's not going to win. He's not winning.
And then that's just less positions that Lewis can take. Or if they go, okay, so let me do this quick. Let's say both McLarens go through. So then Charles is 4 for 15 points, and George is 5th for 12 points. We don't even need points from Lewis then.
I know.
and Leclerc still beat George in the race.
which is feasible. Like we're
This
admitting that
this
it's
might
feasible.
be
The
very
book,
savvy, and
the,
like so. This is only the
yeah,
last race of the year where you could do this, where like it's actually down to the wire.
I just like the comparison between like you essentially get the exact same bet, but you
Hmm.
get a 6 point advantage and you have the second car be a factor. The second car, let's keep in mind, I get that Lewis isn't happy with the setup choice. Maybe he's nothing, but at the very least, he starts ahead of Carlos. I don't know. The guy's had his car rebuilt twice in 2 weekends. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
right?
he doesn't need a new gearbox, right? There was nothing there. His
No, I think
gearbox
he's okay.
survived. The
Yeah, he's
luckiest
okay.
man. Now he's the
He's okay.
luckiest.
No, he's the luckiest man.
I'll be straight with you. I kind of like these four bets. Like if that's the
That's
slip, we can
yeah,
keep
yeah.
looking, but
No, no, no. I don't really see anything else that I like, to be honest. I
I
don't think we can
haven't
take a
throughout
quick
the whole
peek, but
day.
we can take a quick peek.
Let's look at the
I don't
groups. We
really.
I moved off the groups. Okay. Let's
I didn't
actually look
see.
at these.
Okay, look at the groups. I
You
didn't
didn't see
see
anything.
anything.
Yeah, okay.
And I was looking at like
Signs
leader
of
after lap
Alonso.
number, but I didn't really love any of that stuff either.
I mean, this is
I mean, Lewis, like the Lewis Hamilton
yeah,
minus
well, who do you
138 in
like?
group.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna go somewhere different in that group.
I was gonna say Yuki at plus 1400. I love that bet.
Yeah.
I know, I love that
Is that
bet.
instead of the both points?
Nah, nah. You need the positions to play with.
Where's Ricardo? Ricardo's only 137 in his group.
I don't trust. I don't trust. Where's Ricardo plus
What is
136?
Hulk? Dude, Hulk has finished in the points one time this year.
Again, the AlphaTauri bet is we're betting in the future. We're not betting on like what we've seen. We're betting that some sort of unknown becomes known after the race, which is okay. The floor upgrade worked.
No,
It
I love
works
the
really well.
AlphaTauri.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's why I'm
I
saying
thought you were
don't.
gonna say that Hulk was the concern there.
No, 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 no. I'm just saying
Oh,
instead of taking Yuki at plus 1400, take them both at plus 900 because I don't trust Fernando. I don't know what Fernando Alonso's going to do. I guess is my biggest
I
concern.
cut you off. That
I
that
really,
makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do.
This is a bet on us sweating out 9 and 10 with the two AlphaTauris.
I think it's hilarious. I love the bet.
Because
We
Lewis
deserve it.
got up to 8.
Yeah,
Yeah. We
I
no, don't say that. We don't deserve anything. We deserve the scum that we're given.
yeah, we are scum.
F1 gods.
Yeah,
Is this the slip?
I think it might be.
I like that the Merc is the minus 150. Like we got something that's kind of in the middle there.
Yeah. And I would be like, I would put 50 on the AlphaTauri. I'm not like it's very
Yeah.
much a prospective bet. If we
Yes.
could take $450 from that, that would be fantastic, obviously.
Would
So you
love
have
that.
950 to work with, and like it's got to be heavy McLaren, which is fine. That's immediately where we went with our gut feeling. And then you have this Mercedes v. I think this is a hilarious bet, Mercedes v Ferrari. It's going to come down to just this counting down the last couple of laps and who's got what position and
Hey, they're gonna have graphics on the screen. It's not gonna we're not gonna have to do those
100%.
counting. Like this
You're
is
right.
gonna be very focused on. Let's
Yeah.
make a bet on it. It's
Yeah.
gonna be all they're talking about. Merc versus
Yep.
Ferrari tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's fucking I didn't even think of that. We have to bet on it.
It's
It's
so
gonna
much
get
fun.
it's gonna be the entire coverage of the race.
Yeah. It is. It's going to be the whole race coverage is going to be about this.
Yeah.
Again, like if the book is really like so minus 138 Lewis Hamilton in Group 2 versus plus 200 Carlos Sainz. So like they're just like Lewis is going to finish ahead of Carlos. We
Hmm.
think George is going to be relatively close to Charles in the end because they're going to get bumped back by the McLarens. Like it's I think it's just a good bet. You have the 6 point advantage that you're already dealt. It's just to me it seems like it's a savvy bet. It might not happen, but I think it's a savvy bet. I'll take it.
I think it will happen.
I think it will.
Mercedes finishes P2 in the
I
constructors
I
here.
think it will. I think it will happen. I think it will happen.
They
I
finish
agree.
P2.
Well, last time, let's keep in mind we were on top of a top six for Mercedes last time we were in Abu Dhabi, and Lewis had his what he lost hydraulics or he had a water pump
Different
failure. Like
car. Different car.
that's what I mean though. This
Different
is
car.
this is return.
This is a
This is
full
destiny.
redemption.
This
This
is
is just a
destiny's redemption.
redemption slip.
It's a redemption slip, buddy. It's a redemption slip. I like that. That's a good way to look at it.
Are you at all concerned that the number one combo that they're offering is George, Lando, Max? If anything, it helps justify the Merc over Ferrari. That's what made me go look at it. I thought I saw it earlier. Their shortest odds combo involves George.
So, like what are we concerned about then? So that helps the George result helps us in the Ferrari matchup. Then
It might
if
not be a
George
concern
if
because they're
George
saying
finishes,
Lando's two. So then McLaren gets George, McLaren gets
yeah,
Ferrari,
yeah,
and George gets Charles.
sure.
So this might be huge justification for everything.
I think it kind of is, and
The
it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that's what's
doesn't
going to
give you
happen. But
concern
like,
over McLaren over Merc, I guess is the question.
no, because that's the two you have the two bullets versus the one bullet concept, right? Like, I mean,
And I
and we
think
both think they're in a better car. So I don't
and I
like what
think
do
they
you?
disrespect Oscar.
I think they are
They're
disrespecting
all
Oscar
of
for
these
sure.
odds are because they think Lando can get it, and they're saying, "Yeah,
Yeah,
here's the lines because Lando's going to go get him." No, we're saying it might be Oscar that does it.
I would rather be on the side that says like I would rather be pumping Oscar's tires and then have that not work out than talk about it and then Oscar finishes like P2 or
Oh,
P3 and you
that
go,
would
fuck, like what
suck.
do we I know.
Yeah,
Like if it doesn't
yeah,
work out for him, like if he just has a tough race, he doesn't manage his tires well, he ends up in P7 or something like that. Hey, he's a rookie, he's figuring it out. I
sure.
like this idea. We think he's gonna be both of us are like he's a future world champion. So I love this idea of being on him, especially in the last race of the season. I don't know. I think that we can be ahead of the curve on Oscar. We have already done that this year.
I
We
like it.
did, right?
I like it. This is the slip.
Okay. Let me fire it in here.
Okay,
So the shortest odds are the matchup, race matchup
McLaren over
bet,
Ferrari.
McLaren over Ferrari at minus 250. Then we're going to go to minus 200 McLaren over Mercedes. Then we're going to transition to the Formula One Constructors Championship. To finish second is Mercedes at minus 150. And then we're going to take both cars, points finish. We want to be on the AlphaTauri. Plus 900. I love that. Okay, so we are doing 50 on Alpha. Is it 250? I was like 5250 for the Mercedes. And then you've got 700 to play with. Is it
Do we
400,
just go
300?
even, or you want to go 4-3
Well, okay, so let's talk about that. So,
based on the line?
yeah, like is George if George is like how so Charles can ruin two bets, right?
Let me think about let me think about this for a sec. Let me think about this for a sec. Okay, let me see if I can put this together. I feel more confident that we know the McLaren is better than the Merc. Maybe they're both better than the Ferrari, but maybe the Ferrari's not as bad as everyone expects, which would hurt both of them. But I know that if they're both going to get Charles, the McLaren is better than the Merc, is the way I feel. But there's a chance to me that maybe they don't get Charles. So I feel more confident on the Merc bet, even though it's the longer line. Does that make sense?
So,
Charles has more risk to me that we're surprised that the Ferrari again didn't lose its tires.
yeah, but that's
But if
like
they're
again,
both
that's not the
if
crux of the
everyone's
bet,
going
but
through, if
yeah,
everyone's going through though, I think we both feel very confident that one of the McLarens is going to be better than the Mercedes.
that's true. I agree
The
with that.
bigger risk to me is that the McLarens and Mercedes don't actually get Charles for some reason. That feels like it would be a surprise, but if they are getting Charles, the McLaren is going to be better than the Mercedes. So then I feel better at putting the 400 on McLaren over Merc and 300 on McLaren over Ferrari, even though the odds would suggest the opposite. And
I okay.
if I'm
No,
in
no,
cuckoo land, then tell me so.
no. You're not in cuckoo land. I understand what you're talking about. I like the idea of that's kind of like a hedge in some ways on Mercedes finishing in second,
Is
right?
it also? Yeah.
Kind of in some ways, right? Like
Uh,
if you put the bulk on McLaren to finish ahead of Mercedes, and then George finishes ahead of the McLarens, that means that you're probably going to win that Mercedes finishing in second in the
probably.
constructors, right?
and implies that maybe the Merc's not as bad as everyone thinks. So does Lewis. That helps Lewis,
It
like
implies, and
implicitly.
it also, like, that's why betting 300 on the McLaren v Ferrari is the smarter move. Yeah, betting a lower amount just in case something happens with Charles is the better move.
I think so, even though the line would suggest the opposite.
Even though the line would suggest the opposite. Okay. Okay. So that's,
And that's is that the crux of our show. Like we feel a little bit different than what the lines are, and we found a little extra value.
yeah.
Let's see.
Minus
McLaren over
250. So
Merc.
McLaren over Ferrari at minus 250 for $300. McLaren
Yep.
over Mercedes for minus 200 at $400.
Hmm.
Mercedes to finish second, and the constructors at minus 150 for 250. And then the AlphaTauris, if they can do it for us, would be great. Plus 900 for a $50 flyer. I like it.
Love it. What's the payout?
It is 2 grand pretty well, 1936.
Love it. Let's finish strong.